Welcome everyone to the Lord of Mysteries novel summary series on AniMonolith. In the previous part, Klein, Roseanne, and Leonard meet with a client, Butler Klee, who seeks help in finding and rescuing his employer's kidnapped son, Elliot. Klee represents Mr. Viceroy, a wealthy tobacco merchant, and offers a reward of £100 for locating the robber's hideout and £200 if Elliot is rescued. Leonard, though initially skeptical of the offer, agrees to the mission after Roseanne prepares a contract. Leonard then invites Klein to join him in the investigation, as Klein's seer abilities could help in tracking down the kidnappers. Klein eagerly agrees, viewing it as an opportunity to test his abilities in a real-world scenario. When Klein accepted, Leonard immediately asked what Klein needed from the client, because Leonard had previously cooperated with Old Neil and knew that people with mystical abilities always needed items and tools. Support tool. Then Klein immediately thought and replied that he needed clothes Elliot had worn recently that hadn't been washed, and if he could get jewelry that he wore often, even better. Although Klein was very careful when choosing the simplest objects to avoid suspicion he was the beyonder, Klee was still extremely puzzled. Klee even said that to find Elliot, he must know his portrait, and Elliot's portrait was provided through photos. Faced with Klee's doubts, Klein didn't know how to explain, but at this moment Leonard gave a very logical response to save Klein's miserable situation. Leonard said that there was someone in the company who had a dog with an extremely good sense of smell, so the objects that Elliot used would make the dog detect something. For Elliot's portrait, Leonard and Klein will still need it. Of course, Klee accepted this explanation. Then when Klee wanted to return to Mr. Viceroy to provide the items Klein requested, Klein offered to go with Klee so he could survey the scene. Klee then drove the carriage to take Klein and Leonard back to Mr. Viceroy, and to prevent the possibility of the kidnappers discovering anything unusual, Klee chose new paths rather than following the old ones. After arriving, the butler stepped down and Klein and Leonard remained in the carriage to look at Elliot's portrait, but the boy didn't look anything special. Leonard then reminded Klein that it was likely that the Antigonus family memoirs would appear sometime soon. In just a few minutes, Klee returned with Elliot's belongings, a miniature military suit, a small shirt, a small vest, a small bow tie, and a storm amulet made of bronze. Sole surface, above are sculpted symbols of strong winds and ocean waves, but none of them have yet aroused Klein's hunch. As soon as Klein received the items, Klee proactively recounted the details before and after Mr. Elliot was kidnapped. With the keywords 3 guys, normal, and with guns, which were important and valuable things that Klein and Leonard had gathered from Klee's lengthy narrative, they said goodbye to Klee and rented a carriage with the highest service fee. However, Leonard did not rush to tell the coachman where he needed to go but instead turned to wait for an answer from Klein. Understanding Leonard's intention, Klein immediately spread Elliot's shirt on the floor of the carriage and then wrapped Elliot's storm talisman on the handle of a cane that Klein had bought earlier. In a short time, a ball of light condensed in Klein's head. Klein quickly kept his mind calm and entered the cogitation state. He felt vaguely seeing the spirit world everywhere, constantly hinting at Elliot's location in his mind. After 7 times, Klein removed his hand from his cane. The stick never fell but remained upright. Tiny and invisible noises came from all around. Klein felt like a pair of eyes were looking at him indifferently. Carrying this hair-raising feeling, Klein stared intently at his walking stick, his mind continuing to repeat his goal, which was Elliot's position. As soon as he finished muttering, the black stick made from silver-plated wood fell, pointing forward. Klein then told the driver to go straight ahead. The method that Klein just used is called fortune-telling with sticks. Normally, to perform this method, you must use 2 genuine fortune-telling sticks similar in shape to a straight steel wire bent at a right angle, then hold the shorter side and use movement to determine the direction. Because of being a seer, Klein has been through practice so he can directly use the object finder to find people. He can also use a baton stick instead of a divination stick. Whichever direction the stick falls is the direction of his object. I want to find it. The explanation for why Klein did not use this mystical ability to search for the whereabouts of the Antigonus family's notebook is because he no longer remembered the image of the notebook. Then while traveling, Klein continued to use a fortune-telling stick to give instructions on which direction to go. Seeing that, Leonard admitted that he admired Seer's special ability, Klein, and mystery priors, Old Neil. But when Klein humbly said that anyone with a good hunch can understand this method. However, Leonard responded that a high hunch is not always a good thing. Then the two arrived at a 3-story building, similar to an apartment building on Earth, with 2 apartments on each floor. Klein again used the divination stick to find objects on the 1st and 2nd floors, but the stick remained motionless, pointing straight up. Once on the 3rd floor, Klein muttered Elliot's location again, then he saw the batten fall without making any sound, and its direction pointed to the apartment on the right. With spirit vision, Klein could see through the aura inside the room, and he detected the amount of aura corresponding to the 3 kidnappers and Elliot. Remembering Klee's account of the incident, Klein was a bit worried because he knew the 3 kidnappers had guns. But Leonard said there was no need to confront the kidnappers because he would read them a poem. Then, with a face exuding sadness and gloom, Leonard read a poem with a tone that sounded like a lullaby in the dead of night, full of magic and mystery. Klein felt his spirit become panicked, and then he felt an invisible, strange, and indifferent look from behind him, just like when he was traveling in the spiritual world. An extremely familiar aftertaste arose, causing Klein to regain his train of thought. Relying on a strong premonition and cogitation, he was able to escape the influence of that late-night poem. But it is still difficult for Klein's body and mind to develop other emotions. Leonard stopped reading the poem and said that the 3 kidnappers were asleep. Then Leonard immediately approached the door of the room and used his bare hands to punch a large hole in the door. However, when facing Klein, Leonard humbly said that as long as he knew how to properly control his power, he would be fine. When the door opened, Klein saw 2 kidnappers lying down on the table and floor to sleep. Then when he saw someone trying to wake up, Leonard quickly stepped forward and knocked him unconscious. At this moment, Klein suddenly felt something. He turned towards the stairs and quickly discovered a man holding a shopping bag in his hand walking in this direction. Without thinking much, Klein immediately pulled out a gun and pointed it at the other person, fearing that the other person was an accomplice of the kidnappers. Surprised that Klein appeared from nowhere and pointed a gun at him, the man holding the bag immediately argued that maybe Klein had misunderstood something. However, at this moment, Leonard appeared after finishing handling things in the room. He looked at the man and said that it turned out that the kidnappers had accomplices who were in charge of the outside response. Hearing that, Klein immediately pulled the trigger, but the remaining kidnapper quickly leaned over to avoid the fatal wound, only to be grazed by the bullet in his shoulder. But he still didn't stop and tried to run away. Seeing that, Leonard quickly chased after him like lightning. Meanwhile, Klein did not stand still but immediately entered the room to check on Elliot's situation. At the same time, Klein also discovered that after he drank the potion seer, although his eyesight, hearing, and touch did not increase, he could still see things that were covered and could still hear footsteps or little things from which to judge in advance. Then Klein saw the 3 kidnappers being tied up by Leonard with ropes, and Elliot was leaning on a chair and showing signs of waking up. As expected, just a moment later Elliot woke up. The boy looked around in panic and realized he had been saved by 2 men standing in front of him. However, when Elliot asked the identity of the person who saved his life, Leonard jokingly did not answer, so Klein had to explain that they were security guards hired by Elliot's father to save him. After calming down Elliot, Klein immediately followed Leonard's orders and went downstairs to the apartment to report to the local police. Upon arrival, Klein did not use the medals and certificates of the Special Action Division, but used the title of a professional security officer to recount the incident from beginning to end. After that, 2 area police officers coordinated with each other. One person went to notify Butler Klee and Mr. Vickroy, and the other person went to the 3rd-floor apartment to escort the kidnappers. When he saw someone arriving at the scene, Leonard cunningly asked Klein to leave quickly before his client arrived. Sitting in the carriage, Leonard high-fived Klein to congratulate them on their favorable cooperation. However, this did not make Klein happy, because he was still thinking about why he had to leave when the client arrived. Maybe, Mr. Vickroy thinks that if the police help Elliot, the compensation that Blackthorn Security Company will receive will be reduced by half as the cost of hiring personnel to work. Leonard simply replied that he trusted Elliot would not lie about this, and also explained that, even if he took £200 as a reward, Klein would not get to share too much. Then Leonard said that the Beyonders and the Blackthorn Company didn't care about money. Hearing that, Klein felt very hurt because he was very concerned about his salary. Then thanks to Leonard's explanation, Klein learned that the reward from the mission would be partially deducted and given to Oriana, while the Beyonder would receive a reward depending on the specified percentage. Because Klein was not yet an official Beyonder of the Nighthawks, the monetary reward would not be too much. To avoid revealing that I am heartbroken because of the possibility of losing a lot of money, Klein asked Leonard if the kidnappers discovered they had been hit by the Beyonders' special powers. But Leonard calmly replied, "They will no doubt think that the weather is too nice for rest, so they can't help but fall asleep. They even believe that the sound of reciting poetry is inside the dream." This was the knowledge that had been proven by the Beyonders before. At the same time, Leonard also said that the ghost-hunting bullet that Klein used might make others suspicious. However, they could think of a case where some eccentrics liked mysticism and used items from that mysticism, so it was not worth worrying about.